Get your filthy hands off that glass.
I was invited.
Am I stammering? Put it down! That crystal glass is worth more than your life.
The groom invited me. You?
A sharp laugh like shattered glass.
The groom wouldn't associate with a rat like you.
I'm a guest.
You're just a rat in a garbage dump.
The bride's mother turned to the crowd, diamonds glittering around her neck. 300 guests watched. Some laughed, some filmed. No one spoke.
Bradley, get this man out of my daughter's wedding.
They mocked him for an hour, searched his pockets, called him a thief, dragged him to the door. Then the billionaire groom walked in. Look at the man in the cheap suit and say just one word. No one in that room was prepared for what was about to happen. Grant Holloway arrived at the Whitmore estate in a yellow cab at 4:17 in the afternoon. The driver pulled up behind a line of black sedans and a pearl white Rolls-Royce. Grant paid in cash, tucked the receipt into his breast pocket, and stepped onto the gravel drive. The estate sat on 42 acres of rolling Connecticut hillside. Stone columns framed the entrance. A fountain carved from Italian marble splashed softly in the courtyard. Valets in matching vests moved between vehicles like choreographed dancers, opening doors for women in gowns that cost more than some people's yearly rent. Grant wore a navy suit, off the rack, clean, pressed, and 10 years old. His shoes were polished but creased at the toe. He carried no gift bag, no designer watch, no invitation visible in hand. He looked like a man who had come to fix the plumbing. A valet glanced at him, then looked away. Grant walked through the front doors without stopping. Inside, the reception hall stretched out like a cathedral of wealth. Ceiling frescoes, orchids flown in from Thailand, round tables draped in ivory linen with gold-rimmed chargers at each setting. A string quartet played Debussy in the far corner. The air smelled like roses, expensive perfume, and old money. 300 guests filled the room. Hedge fund managers, real estate developers, society wives whose names appeared in charity galas and gossip columns. The Sterling family had made sure every seat belonged to someone who mattered, or at least someone who looked like they did. The Sterlings were Connecticut royalty. Victoria Sterling, mother of the bride, had built Sterling Properties into a $200 million empire of luxury condos and waterfront developments. Her late husband had started the business. She had tripled it. Her son Bradley served as vice president and spent most of his time reminding people of that fact. The bride, Sophia Sterling, was Victoria's pride, a Yale-educated art curator with a smile that photographers loved. She was marrying Ethan Cole, a 31-year-old billionaire whose venture capital firm had turned 3 failing startups into household names in under 5 years. The business press called him a prodigy. Forbes had put him on the cover twice. What nobody at that wedding knew was who had made Ethan Cole. Grant found a seat near the back, not assigned to him, just empty. He sat down, folded his hands on the table, and waited. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. Grant reached for one. "Those are for guests," the waiter said, pulling the tray back slightly. Grant lowered his hand. Of course. He asked for water instead. The waiter brought it in a plain glass, no ice, no lemon. Grant sipped and watched. At the head table, Victoria Sterling held court. She moved between clusters of guests like a queen surveying her kingdom, kissing cheeks, adjusting boutonnieres, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Her dress was emerald green, custom, with diamonds at the collar that caught the chandelier light every time she turned her head. Bradley stood near the bar with 3 friends, all of them loud, all of them drinking scotch, at 4:30 in the afternoon. He wore a charcoal suit with a pocket square that matched his mother's dress. His laugh was the kind that made people nearby go quiet. It was Bradley who noticed Grant first. He nudged one of his friends, nodded toward the back table, said something that made all 4 of them look at once. Then he walked to his mother. "Mom," Bradley leaned close to Victoria's ear. "There's a man sitting at table 19. I don't recognize him. Nobody does." Victoria turned. Her eyes found Grant across the room. She studied him the way someone studies a stain on white fabric. "Who is he?" "No idea. He came in through the front. No one stopped him." Victoria set down her champagne, smoothed the front of her dress. "I'll handle it." She crossed the room, every step deliberate. The string quartet shifted to a softer piece, as if the music itself sensed something was about to happen. And Grant Holloway, who had built a fortune larger than every person in that room combined, sat at table 19 with a glass of plain water and waited for the woman in emerald to reach him. Victoria Sterling reached table 19 in 12 steps. She counted them herself, a habit from decades of property showings where every stride communicated authority. Her emerald dress caught the candlelight. Her chin was high. Her eyes were locked on the man sitting alone with a glass of water. "Excuse me." Grant looked up. "Good evening," he said. Victoria did not return the greeting. "May I ask who you are?" "Grant Holloway." "And how did you come to be here, Mr. Holloway?" "I was invited." Victoria tilted her head. The diamond at her collar flashed. "Invited? By whom exactly?" "The groom." She smiled, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with warmth. "Ethan doesn't know. Well, I'm sure there's been some confusion. This is a private event, very private. The guest list was curated personally." "I understand. Then you'll understand that we need to verify." She turned and signaled to the wedding planner, a thin woman in a black dress carrying a tablet. "Claire, check the guest list. The name is Holloway." Claire tapped through her screen. Her eyes widened slightly. "He's on the list, Mrs. Sterling. Table 19. Guest of the groom." Victoria's jaw tightened. A vein pressed against her temple. There must be a mistake. "It's right here, ma'am. Added by Mr. Cole personally." Victoria leaned closer to Claire. Her whisper was not quiet enough. "I don't care what the screen says. Look at him. Does he look like he belongs here?" Claire said nothing. She lowered the tablet, clutched it against her chest, and stepped back. Victoria turned to Grant again. She had recalibrated. The smile returned, but sharper now, like a blade dressed in silk. "Mr. Holloway, I'm not sure how this happened, but perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere this evening. I can have someone arrange a car for you. A nice restaurant in town, perhaps. Our treat." "I'm fine right here," Grant said. "Thank you." The politeness in his voice seemed to irritate her more than any argument could have. She was not used to people declining her suggestions. In Victoria Sterling's world, suggestions were instructions. No one pushed back. Not contractors, not business partners, not family. Bradley appeared at her side. He was 3 inches taller than his mother and 40 pounds heavier, most of it from gym sessions he talked about constantly. His scotch sloshed as he planted himself between Victoria and the table. The smell of whiskey cut through the roses. "What's going on?" "This gentleman says Ethan invited him." Bradley looked Grant up and down. He did not try to hide it. His gaze started at the creased shoes, traveled up the off-the-rack suit, paused at the plain watch on Grant's wrist, and stopped at Grant's face. "You know Ethan?" "I do." "From where?" "Work." Bradley snorted. "Work? What kind of work?" "Investment." "Investment." Bradley turned to his mother with a grin that begged to be shared. "He says he's in investment." 2 guests at the adjacent table exchanged glances. One of them covered her mouth with her napkin. Bradley turned back to Grant. "What firm?" "My own." "Your own?" He repeated everything like he was translating it into a language he could mock. "And what's it called?" "Pinnacle Capital." Bradley shrugged. He had never heard of it. That was enough for him. Ignorance had always been his most reliable weapon. "Listen, pal, I don't know who let you in, but this wedding costs more than whatever you make in a decade. So how about you finish your water and find the exit before this gets embarrassing for you?" Grant set down his glass. "I'd prefer to stay." "That wasn't a request." "I know." The exchange drew attention. Guests at nearby tables turned in their chairs. Conversations dimmed, like someone had lowered the volume on the entire room. A woman in a red dress pulled out her phone, not to call anyone, but to record. Her husband nudged her, but she kept filming. Victoria saw the phones. She recalculated, but not in the direction of caution. In her mind, removing Grant quickly was the best way to contain the situation. The longer he sat there, the more people would wonder why a man in a cheap suit was sitting at a table meant for a venture capitalist from Greenwich. "Bradley," she said quietly, "get the security team." Bradley nodded and walked toward the service entrance. He finished his scotch on the way and set the empty glass on a passing waiter's tray without looking. Grant remained still. He did not fidget. He did not check his phone. He did not scan the room for an ally. He sat the way a man sits when he has been in rooms like this before. Rooms where people decided he didn't belong long before he walked in. His hands rested flat on the ivory tablecloth. His breathing was even. A woman at the next table leaned toward her husband. "Who is he?" "Nobody. Probably crashed the wedding." "Should we say something?" "To who?" "Victoria's handling it." "He looks harmless." "Not our business." That was the consensus. Victoria was handling it. And Victoria always handled things. That was what made her Victoria. Claire, the wedding planner, approached Grant from the side. She crouched slightly so they were at eye level. Her face carried the tight expression of someone caught between conscience and paycheck. "Sir, I'm sorry. I can confirm you're on the list, but Mrs. Sterling has asked." "I heard what she asked." "Would you like me to call Mr. Cole? He's in the groom suite, getting ready for the reception entrance." "No," Grant said. "Don't bother him. This is his day." Claire hesitated. She opened her mouth to say something else, then closed it. Then she stood up and walked away, her heels clicking faster than they needed to. Two security guards arrived through a side door. They wore dark suits and earpieces and moved with the practiced calm of men paid to remove problems without making scenes. Bradley walked behind them like a general leading troops he hadn't earned. "That's him," Bradley said, pointing at Grant with his index finger. "The one at 19. The guards approached. One of them, a broad man with a shaved head and hands the size of dinner plates, leaned down. "Sir, we've been asked to escort you out." "On whose authority?" "The family's." "The bride's family?" "Yes, sir." Grant nodded slowly. "And the groom? Was he consulted?" The guard paused. Something shifted behind his eyes, a flicker of doubt that training taught him to suppress. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with us." "I understand." Grant stood. He buttoned his jacket with one hand, a small, precise movement. He picked up his glass of water, drank the last sip, and set it down gently on the ivory cloth without a sound. He did not raise his voice. He did not protest. He did not look at Victoria. He walked between the two guards with his shoulders straight and his chin level, like a man walking out of a boardroom, not a ballroom. Bradley called after him. "Hey!" Grant stopped. Bradley held up a champagne flute. "People like you don't drink champagne." He grinned. A few guests nearby laughed, short, uncomfortable laughs, the kind people use when they know something is wrong, but choose to be entertained by it instead. A teenager at a far table was live streaming. The comment section was already filling up. Grant looked at Bradley for 3 full seconds. His expression didn't change. Not anger, not shame. Something quieter. Something that made Bradley's grin falter for just a fraction of a moment. Then Grant turned and kept walking. Victoria watched from the center of the room. She adjusted her diamond collar, straightened her shoulders, and smiled at the nearest guest as if nothing had happened. "So sorry about that," she said. "You never know who wanders in these days." The guest nodded. "You handled it beautifully, Victoria." "Well, someone has to maintain standards." Across the room, Raymond Cole, Ethan's father, stepped through the main entrance. He was late. His flight from Boston had been delayed 2 hours by fog, and he still had his overcoat folded over his arm. He scanned the room, saw Victoria holding court, saw Bradley laughing near the bar again, and then saw something that made his stomach drop. 2 security guards walking a black man toward the exit. Raymond squinted. Then his face went white. He started moving, fast. His overcoat fell off his arm. He didn't pick it up. "Victoria!" He reached her in 4 strides. "Victoria, who is that man they're taking out?" "Some crasher. Bradley and I handled it. Don't worry about... What's his name?" "Holloway or something. Why?" Raymond Cole's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. The blood drained from his face so completely that Victoria actually reached for his arm. "Raymond, are you ill?" "Victoria, you need to stop them, right now." "Raymond, please, it's handled. That man is Grant Holloway." "Yes, and?" "Grant Holloway. The Grant Holloway, founder of Tentacle Capital. He manages over $12 billion in assets. He is the reason your son-in-law is a billionaire. He is the reason this wedding exists." Victoria blinked. The smile didn't disappear. It froze, like a photograph of a woman who had just heard the floor crack beneath her. "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not being ridiculous. I've met him, twice, at Ethan's office. He is Ethan's mentor, his first investor, his boss." Victoria's eyes darted toward the exit. The guards were almost at the door. Grant was between them, still walking with that same steady, unhurried stride. But Raymond's words came too late. Or maybe they came exactly on time, depending on which side of the story you were standing on. Because at that exact moment, the double doors of the groom's suite burst open, and Ethan Cole walked into the room. The security guards walked Grant Holloway toward the exit with one hand on each arm. Their grip was firm, not violent, but deliberate. The kind of hold designed to move a body without leaving a mark. Grant didn't resist. His shoes made soft sounds on the marble. His eyes stayed forward. His breathing stayed even. Behind him, the reception hall hummed back to life like a machine that had been briefly interrupted. Conversations resumed, glasses clinked, the string quartet picked up where they had left off, a Chopin nocturne that felt absurdly gentle against what was happening near the door. Bradley Sterling followed the guards at a comfortable distance, hands in his pockets, grinning like a man who had just won a hand of poker he'd rigged. He leaned toward a guest at a nearby table and said, loud enough for a dozen people to hear, "Can you believe that? Just walked right in, like he owned the place." The guest, a man in a three-piece suit with a Patek Philippe glinting at his wrist, chuckled. "Bold move." "Bold?" Bradley scoffed. "Stupid. You'd think they'd at least dress the part if they're going to crash a sterling wedding." The man raised his glass. "To standards." Bradley clinked it. They both drank. At another table, a woman in pearl earrings leaned toward her companion. "I actually feel a little bad for him." "Don't. If he didn't belong here, he didn't belong here. Victoria knows her guest list." "Still, did you see his face? He didn't even argue." "That's because he knew he was caught. Or maybe he just has dignity." The companion frowned. "Don't be dramatic, Helen." Helen went quiet. She picked up her fork and moved a piece of salmon across her plate, and said nothing else for the rest of the hour. Every table had its own version of what happened. Wedding crasher, con artist, confused caterer, homeless man who wandered in from the road. Nobody considered the possibility that Grant Holloway was exactly who he said he was, a guest of the groom, sitting at the table assigned to him, drinking water because a waiter had pulled the champagne tray away from his hand. A teenage girl at table 12 held her phone steady, filming the entire thing. Her Instagram live counter hit 5,000 viewers. The comments scrolled too fast to read. "OMG, they're dragging him out. This is so messed up. Someone do something. Is this real? That poor man just stood there and took it. Hashtag wedding racism." Nobody in the room was doing something. The comments felt brave. The room did not. Victoria Sterling returned to her position near the head table. She smoothed the tablecloth. She checked the flower arrangements. She signaled for more champagne to be poured. Every gesture communicated the same thing. This is over. Let us move on. But she kept glancing toward the exit. Something Raymond had said was rattling around in the back of her skull like a marble in a tin can. She pushed it down. Sophia appeared briefly in the doorway to the bridal suite. She had heard the commotion. Her eyes scanned the room and found Bradley near the exit. Found the guards, found the man between them. "What's happening?" she whispered to a bridesmaid. "Some guy crashed the wedding. Your mom took care of it." Sophia watched Grant being led away. Something in his posture, the straightness of his back, the quiet dignity of his stride, made her stomach turn. She had grown up watching her mother remove people, from parties, from business deals, from her life. It had always been described as maintaining standards. Tonight, for the first time, it looked like something else. She didn't intervene. She turned back into the bridal suite and closed the door. Bradley wasn't done. He jogged ahead of the guards and positioned himself in front of Grant, blocking the path. The guards stopped. Grant stopped. "Hold on," Bradley said. He was enjoying this. His eyes had the bright, restless look of a boy pulling wings off an insect, fascinated by his own cruelty. "Before you go, I just want to make sure. You weren't planning on taking anything with you, were you?" Grant looked at him. "Excuse me? I mean, you came in uninvited, sat at someone else's table, helped yourself to refreshments. I just want to make sure the silverware count checks out when we're done tonight." One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. He looked at his partner. Neither of them had signed up for this. "I didn't take anything," Grant said. "Check his pockets," Bradley said to the guards. The broad guard with the shaved head shook his head slightly. "Sir, we're not authorized to." "I said check his pockets." Bradley's voice lost its playfulness. What replaced it was something older, something he had inherited alongside the trust fund and the family name. "My mother is paying your firm $8,000 for tonight. You'll do what I tell you. Check his pockets." A silence opened in the hallway. The guard looked at Grant. Grant lifted his arms slightly, palms out. "Go ahead," Grant said. "I have nothing to hide." The guard patted Grant's jacket. Left side, right side, breast pocket, a folded handkerchief, trouser pockets, a wallet, a phone, a cab receipt. He held each item briefly, then returned them. "He's clean, sir." Bradley stared at the wallet. Plain leather, worn at the edges, nothing embossed, nothing designer. "Let me see that." Grant's hand moved, not fast, but certain. He took the wallet from the guard's hand before Bradley could reach it. "That's mine," Grant said. The words were quiet, but they carried a weight that made Bradley's extended hand stop in midair. For 1 second, something flickered across Bradley's face. Not shame. He didn't have the machinery for that. Frustration. The frustration of a bully who expected a victim and found, instead, a wall he couldn't crack. He recovered fast. "Whatever," Bradley waved dismissively. "Get him out, and make sure he doesn't come back. If he shows up at the door again, call the police." The guards resumed walking. Grant resumed walking between them, steady, unhurried, as if this hallway were his to walk at his own pace. They passed the service corridor where kitchen staff watched through a half-open door. A young dishwasher, barely 20, dark-skinned, wearing a stained apron, locked eyes with Grant for a brief moment. The boy's fists were clenched at his sides. Grant gave him a small nod, almost imperceptible. The boy swallowed hard and looked away. They reached the main exit. The heavy oak doors were propped open. Beyond them, the Connecticut evening waited. Cool air, cricket song, the splash of the courtyard fountain, the gleam of a pearl-white Rolls-Royce under iron lanterns. Bradley held the door with a theatrical bow. "After you. Watch your step out there. Wouldn't want you to trip on the way back to whatever bus you rode in on." Grant stepped through the threshold. The evening air touched his face. He stopped, took a breath, let it out slowly. Behind him, inside the hall, Raymond Cole was gripping Victoria's arm hard enough to leave fingerprints. "Victoria, listen to me. That man is the founder of Pinnacle Capital." Victoria pulled free. "I don't know what that is, and I don't care. It's a $12 billion investment firm. It funds Ethan's entire operation, every cent. Do you understand what I'm telling you? That man is the reason your daughter is marrying a billionaire tonight." The color left Victoria's face like water draining from a sink. Her hand found the back of a chair. "You're lying. I met him, twice. Once at the signing when Pinnacle invested the first $100 million. Once at a private dinner. Ethan calls him boss. Not as a title, because that's who he is." Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked toward the exit. Grant was on the threshold. The guards stood on either side. The door was closing. "Stop them," she whispered. "Stop them now." But the room was loud. The quartet was playing. Champagne was pouring. And Victoria Sterling's whisper, for the first time in her life, wasn't loud enough to reach anyone who mattered. Then a door slammed open. Not the exit door, the groom's suite door. Ethan Cole stood in the frame. Midnight blue tuxedo, white rose on his lapel, hair combed back, jaw locked. His eyes swept the room like searchlights and found the scene at the exit in under 2 seconds. "Stop!" Every head in the room turned. "Get your hands off him!" Ethan's voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It cut. "Now!" Grant stood on the threshold, 1 foot inside the hall, 1 foot on the stone outside, and turned to look at the groom. The string quartet stopped mid-note. The room held its breath. Ethan Cole crossed the reception hall in 8 seconds. His shoes struck the marble in sharp, rapid beats. Guests stepped aside without being asked. A waiter carrying a tray of canapés pressed himself against a pillar. The crowd parted the way water parts for a stone dropped from height. The guards released Grant's arms before Ethan reached them. They didn't need to be told twice. Whatever authority Bradley Sterling claimed over them dissolved the moment the groom spoke. Ethan reached Grant at the threshold. For one breath, the two men stood face to face. Grant, navy suit, creased shoes, empty hands. Ethan, midnight blue tuxedo, white rose on his lapel, a billion-dollar empire behind his name. Ethan reached forward and straightened Grant's lapel, gently, carefully, the way a son adjusts his father's tie before a family portrait. Then he turned to face 300 silent guests. "This man is Grant Holloway." Nobody moved. A champagne flute somewhere near table 6 slipped from someone's fingers and hit the linen with a muffled thud. He is the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Capital. His firm manages $12.4 billion in assets across 3 continents. When I was 23 years old, sleeping on my college roommate's couch, eating ramen for dinner 6 nights a week, every venture capital firm in this city told me no. Every single one. They looked at my pitch deck and they laughed. Ethan paused. His jaw tightened. His voice dropped half a register. One man didn't laugh. One man sat across from me in a diner, not a boardroom, not a corner office, a diner on 9th Avenue, and read every page of my pitch. Asked me questions for 2 hours. Then he wrote a check that changed my life. That man is standing right here. He pointed at Grant. Every dollar that flows through Cole Ventures originated from his investment. Every startup I turned around, every deal I closed, every magazine cover, every Forbes list, every invitation to every gala in this room, it all traces back to one decision that Grant Holloway made over a plate of scrambled eggs when nobody else on this earth believed in me. Ethan looked at Victoria. His eyes didn't waver. "The dress you're wearing tonight, Victoria. My wedding gift to Sophia paid for it. The champagne your son is gulping, my account. The deposit on this estate, the flowers, the string quartet, the ice sculpture in the garden, mine. And every cent of mine exists because of him." He let the silence hold. "You didn't just throw out a stranger tonight. You threw out the man who built everything you celebrated. You humiliated my boss. At my wedding. In front of 300 people." Victoria's hand gripped the back of a chair so hard, the joints groaned. Her face had cycled through red, white, and finally settled on a shade of gray that matched the stone pillars behind her. Her lips parted. No words came. Bradley stood near the exit, frozen mid-step. The theatrical bow was gone. The smirk was gone. What remained was something stripped and raw, the face of a man watching a building he'd built his confidence on collapse floor by floor. The man with the Patek Philippe at the nearby table stared into his champagne. He did not raise it. He did not toast to standards. Raymond Cole stood behind Victoria's shoulder. His arms were crossed. His jaw was set. He said nothing. He didn't have to. His silence was the loudest sound in the room. Sophia had slipped out of the bridal suite during the speech. She stood near the kitchen entrance in her white gown, both hands over her mouth. Mascara-tinted tears left dark streaks on the French lace of her bodice. She had seen it through a crack in the door, and closed that door and gone back to adjusting her veil. The weight of that choice pressed down on her now, visible in her bent shoulders, her shaking hands, the way she couldn't lift her eyes from the floor. Ethan turned back to Grant. The hall was so quiet, you could hear the crickets in the garden through the open door. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. Not to the room, just to Grant, quiet enough that only Grant could hear. "I should have been out here." Grant put a hand on Ethan's shoulder, firm, steady. "You're here now." They had no right. No, they didn't. "I'm going to fix this." Grant looked at him, really looked, the way a mentor looks at someone he bet everything on when nobody else would. Something in his expression shifted. Not pain, not triumph, recognition. The recognition that Ethan Cole had become exactly the kind of man Grant always believed he could be. "Don't let this ruin your night," Grant said. "You're getting married today." "Some things matter more than a party." Victoria took a half step forward. Her voice cracked. "Ethan, we didn't know. If we had known who he was..." "That's the problem, Victoria." Ethan's voice stayed level. He didn't need volume. The words did the work on their own. "You didn't need to know who he was. You just needed to be decent." The word landed like a gavel on marble. Victoria stopped. The string quartet did not resume. The champagne went flat in its flutes. 300 people who had spent the last hour watching a man be stripped of his dignity now sat inside the wreckage of their own complicity. Every guest who had laughed at Bradley's champagne joke, every guest who had whispered, "Victoria's handling it," every guest who had filmed and done nothing, every guest who had turned a shoulder and studied a napkin and decided it wasn't their business. They sat in their silk and their diamonds and their silence. And Grant Holloway buttoned his jacket with one hand, walked back across the marble floor with that same steady stride, and sat down at table 19. His water glass was still empty. Nobody rushed to fill it. He folded his hands on the ivory tablecloth and waited. The next 45 minutes unfolded like a controlled demolition. Ethan Cole pulled out his phone. He did not leave the room. He did not lower his voice. He stood at the center of the reception hall, in his tuxedo, at his own wedding, and made 3 phone calls. The first was to his attorney. "Pull every active contract between Cole Ventures and Sterling Properties. All of them. Effective immediately." Victoria's mouth opened. "Ethan, you can't..." "I just did." The second call was to his chief of staff. "Cancel the joint development project in Westport. Freeze the escrow. I want Sterling Properties removed from every pipeline document by morning." Bradley stepped forward. His face had found a color again, an ugly red, flushed with equal parts anger and dawning terror. "You're overreacting. We didn't know who he was. If you'd just told us..." "I shouldn't have had to tell you." Ethan didn't look at him. "That's the whole point, Bradley. You shouldn't need a man's net worth to treat him like a human being." The third call was to his publicist. "Get ahead of this. There's video everywhere. I want a statement out within the hour. My name, my words, no spin." He hung up. Victoria sank into a chair. Her emerald dress pooled around her like water. The diamonds at her collar caught the light, but they didn't sparkle the same way anymore. Nothing about her sparkled. She looked like a woman watching her empire crack in real time. "You're destroying our family," she whispered. "No," Ethan said. "You did that an hour ago." Raymond Cole sat down next to Victoria, not to comfort her, to make sure she didn't leave before the consequences finished arriving. Across the room, Claire, the wedding planner, was fielding calls. Her phone had not stopped buzzing since the first video hit Twitter. 4 media outlets had already reached out. A reporter from the Hartford Courant was in the parking lot. Bradley tried one more time. He straightened his pocket square, an absurd gesture given the circumstances, and approached Ethan with his hands raised, palms out, like a man approaching a wild animal. "Listen, let's be rational about this. We were protecting the family. There was an unknown man at the wedding. We took precautions, that's all." Ethan finally looked at him. Precautions. He let the words sit between them. Is that what you call checking a black man's pockets in front of 300 people? Is that what you call offering to count the silverware? Is that what you call telling him, what was it? People like you don't drink champagne. Bradley's mouth closed. Those are precautions, Bradley. Those are choices, and they're the kind of choices that show everyone exactly who you are. A guest at table 3 stood up, collected his wife's clutch, and walked toward the exit. He didn't say goodbye. 2 more couples followed within minutes. then a table of 4, then 3 singles from the bar. The exodus was quiet. No one made a scene. They simply calculated the cost of being associated with the Sterling family after tonight and decided the math didn't work. Grant remained at table 19. A waiter, a different one from before, approached him with a glass of champagne on a silver tray. The waiter's hand was shaking. "Mr. Holloway, can I get you anything?" Grant looked at the champagne, then at the waiter. "Water's fine," he said. "Thank you." The waiter brought water, with ice this time, and a lemon wedge. Sophia crossed the room. Her white gown trailed behind her. Her makeup was ruined. She stopped in front of Grant and stood there for 5 full seconds before she could speak. "Mr. Holloway, I am so sorry." Grant looked up at her. "You're the bride." "Yes." "Congratulations." Sophia's lip trembled. "I watched them do it. I was in the other room. I saw through the door. And I did nothing." Grant studied her face. "You're doing something now. It's not enough." "No," Grant said. "It isn't. But it's a start." Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her engagement ring, a 4-carat diamond from Ethan, caught the light. She looked at it as if seeing it for the first time. "He changed because of you," she said. "Ethan, he's a better man because of you." Grant said nothing. He just nodded. Once, Sophia walked back to Ethan. He took her hand. They stood together in the middle of the wreckage of their wedding reception, and for one brief moment, they looked like the only 2 people in the room who understood what really mattered. Outside, the first news van pulled into the gravel drive. The fountain kept splashing. The crickets kept singing. The Rolls-Royce sat gleaming under the lanterns. The night was just getting started. The video hit the internet before the cake was cut. The teenager at table 12, her name was Megan, though no one would remember that detail for long, had streamed the entire incident live. By the time the first news van parked on the gravel drive outside the Whitmore estate, her clip had been viewed 200,000 times. By midnight, it crossed 3 million. By the following afternoon, it passed 12 million and was still climbing. The headline wrote itself: "Billionaire groom's boss humiliated at his own wedding by bride's racist family." Every major outlet ran a version of it within hours. CNN picked up the story by 10 p.m. Saturday. The New York Times had a reporter on the ground in Connecticut by Sunday morning. The Hartford Courant ran a front-page feature with a photograph of the Whitmore estate under the caption, "The wedding that became a reckoning." The internet did what the internet does. It found names. It found faces. It found LinkedIn profiles and company websites and old social media posts that should have been deleted years ago. Bradley Sterling's Instagram was excavated within hours. Photos of him on yachts and at country clubs. A post from 3 years earlier where he had written under a picture of his Porsche, "Some people are born to lead. The rest should learn to follow." 30,000 replies in one night. Most unprintable. Victoria Sterling's charitable legacy was re-examined under a new lens. An investigative blogger discovered that Sterling Properties had never, in 31 years, hired a black executive above assistant manager. The finding went viral under #SterlingStandards. The hashtag Justice for Grant trended nationally for 3 consecutive days. Sterling Properties felt the impact before Monday morning. 3 major clients pulled contracts within 48 hours. A development deal in Greenwich, $68 million, collapsed when the investment group cited reputational risk. The firm's largest lender issued a formal review notice. Stock in their REIT dropped 9% in a single session. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting Tuesday at 7 a.m. Bradley Sterling was asked to resign. When he refused, loudly, with threats of a lawsuit, the board voted 7-2 to terminate him. His severance was reduced to the contractual minimum. His company car was collected from the parking garage on Tuesday while he watched from his office window. Victoria held a board seat and the title of Chairwoman Emerita. The board asked her to step down from all public-facing roles until further notice. She agreed. 3 of her closest allies had voted against her. The social consequences followed the financial ones like dominoes. Victoria was quietly removed from the planning committee of the Greenwich Charity Gala, an event she had co-chaired for 19 years. Her membership at the Whitmore Country Club was placed under review. Longtime friends stopped returning phone calls. Invitations to dinner parties arrived with diminishing frequency and then stopped arriving at all. Bradley fared worse. His gym membership was technically still active, but no one would spot him. His regular table at Morton's Steakhouse was suddenly always booked. A woman he had been dating for 2 months ended things over text. 4 words, "I saw the video." Grant Holloway, meanwhile, said almost nothing. His publicist released a single statement 3 days after the wedding. It was 4 sentences long. "On Saturday evening, I attended the wedding of Ethan Cole, a man I've had the privilege of mentoring for 8 years. During the reception, I was asked to leave by members of the bride's family. I hold no personal grudge. I do hope this moment encourages all of us to examine the assumptions we make about people based on how they look." That was it. No lawsuit, no press tour, no interview circuit, no book deal. Grant Holloway had spent 40 years building Pinnacle Capital into one of the most respected investment firms in the Western Hemisphere. And he had done it the same way he handled that Saturday night, with patience, with precision, and without once raising his voice. But he did make one move. 2 weeks after the wedding, Pinnacle Capital announced the creation of the Holloway Fellowship, a $50 million scholarship and mentorship fund for young entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities. The announcement did not reference the wedding. It didn't need to. Everyone who read it understood exactly what it meant. The fund received 12,000 applications in its first month. Ethan Cole was the first outside donor. He matched Grant's $50 million with $50 million of his own. At the press conference announcing the combined $100 million commitment, a reporter from Bloomberg asked him why. Ethan looked directly into the camera. "Because 8 years ago, a man I had never met sat across from me in a diner and decided I was worth believing in. He didn't ask what school I went to. He didn't ask what my father did for a living. He didn't ask what I looked like. He looked at my work and he saw potential. That's the kind of world I want to build. That's the only kind worth building." The clip was viewed 42 million times in 1 week. Sophia Cole. She had taken Ethan's name after the wedding, released her own public statement 7 days later. It was longer than Grant's and far more raw. She wrote about growing up in the Sterling household, about the values she was taught to display and the prejudices she was taught to ignore. She wrote about watching Grant Holloway be escorted out of her wedding and choosing to close the bridal suite door. She wrote about shame. "I was raised to believe that silence was politeness," she wrote. "I now understand that silence in the face of cruelty is participation." The essay was republished by The Atlantic and read aloud on 2 podcasts. Sophia received 6,000 messages, some angry, most grateful, many from people who said her words forced them to examine their own silences. The young dishwasher from the kitchen, the one who had locked eyes with Grant in the service corridor, applied for the Holloway Fellowship 4 months later. His name was James Cooper. He was 20 years old. He had dropped out of community college to work double shifts and support his mother after her hip surgery. His application essay was 1 paragraph long. It read, "I watched a man walk through the worst kind of disrespect without losing who he was. I want to build something that makes that kind of strength unnecessary." James Cooper was accepted into the inaugural cohort of 24 fellows. Grant Holloway called him personally to deliver the news. 6 months later, Grant Holloway sat in his office on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. The office was large, but not lavish. A wooden desk, a leather chair that had been reupholstered twice. Framed photographs on the wall, not of buildings or magazine covers, but of people, mentees, fellows, young entrepreneurs who had sat across from him in diners and conference rooms and living rooms and heard the same words. "Tell me what you've got." On his desk, next to a stack of quarterly reports, sat a wedding invitation, ivory cardstock with gold lettering. The edges were still crisp. He had never thrown it away. Below his window, Manhattan hummed. Taxis and delivery trucks, steam rising from grates. A city that never stopped moving, never stopped deciding who belonged and who didn't. Grant's phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. James Cooper just closed his first round, $2.3 million. He called me crying. Grant read the message, read it again. Then he set the phone down and looked at the photograph on the far wall. A young man in a stained apron, standing outside a commercial kitchen, squinting against the sun. James had sent it the day he was accepted into the fellowship. He had written on the back, Day 1. That was 8 months ago. Now James had investors, a team of 4, and a prototype for a meal prep delivery service targeting food deserts. One venture partner called his pitch, the clearest articulation of mission-driven business I've heard in 20 years. Grant was not surprised. He had seen something in James's eyes that night in the service corridor. The same thing someone had once seen in his own eyes, decades ago, in a tobacco field in South Carolina. Not ambition, something quieter. Refusal. The refusal to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be. Ethan and Sophia's marriage survived the fallout. Not easily. The first 3 months were a siege. Arguments, scrutiny, therapy. But they held on. Sophia resigned from her family's foundation and started her own nonprofit focused on diversity in the arts. She called it The Open Door. She didn't explain the name. She didn't need to. Victoria Sterling had not made a public appearance in 4 months. Friends who had seen her said she looked smaller, thinner, older. Whether she had changed or simply retreated was a question nobody could answer yet. Change, the real kind, doesn't announce itself. It works slowly, like water on stone, and you don't see the shape until years later. Bradley had moved to Florida. He told people he was consulting. He was not consulting. He was sitting in a rented condo in Boca Raton, refreshing his Google alerts and waiting for the internet to forget him. The internet was not forgetting him. Raymond Cole visited Grant once, 3 months after the wedding. He brought a bottle of whiskey and an apology that took him 11 minutes to finish. Grant listened to the whole thing. Then he poured 2 glasses and they sat in silence and drank. Some things don't need more words than that. The Holloway Fellowship completed its first year with 24 fellows, 19 of whom launched businesses. 3 of those businesses were already profitable. 1 had been acquired. James Cooper's was growing. Grant attended every graduation. He shook every hand. He looked every fellow in the eye and said the same thing he had said to Ethan Cole in a diner 8 years earlier. I believe in what you're building. Now go prove me right. The story of that night at the Whitmore estate was told and retold, shared and reshared, until it became something larger than what happened to one man at one wedding. It became a mirror. People saw themselves in it, sometimes as Grant, sometimes as Sophia, sometimes, uncomfortably, as Victoria or Bradley. Sometimes as the guests at the other tables, holding their champagne, saying nothing. That was the part that stuck. Not the wealth, not the reveal, not the billionaire groom calling a man in a navy suit his boss. The silence. All those people, all that silence. What would you have done if you were at that wedding? Would you have spoken up? Or would you have looked away, told yourself it wasn't your business, and gone back to your champagne? Drop your answer in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because stories like this one aren't just entertainment. They're a reminder that the measure of a person was never the suit they wear or the car they drive. It's what they do when someone with less power needs them to do something. And it's what they don't do when staying silent would be easier. Yo, staying neutral when someone's getting hurt? That's not neutral fur. That's picking a side, just the cowardly one. Every laugh you didn't push back on, every awkward look you turned away from, that's a vote. Don't let comfort make you complicit.